I wasn't really the loudest person in the room. But what made the difference is one, acknowledging that I am not an extroverted individual. What has really helped the context driven part is that because I'm also able to really take the time to really listen to feedback. Again, building on that empathy, providing the context. Because sometimes, even as a context driven leader, if you want to go one way and everyone else is telling you the other way is the better way, you still have to listen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Experience Matters podcast. Today we have Karen Lamb with us. Karen is the Director of Customer Support at Top Hat, an edtech company that helps college and university instructors create interactive, engaging classroom experiences. Before Top Hat, Karen worked on customer care operations at TELUS and later at WSP, where she managed IT service delivery and process improvement. Karen brings a strong mix of technical knowledge and customer service expertise in telecommunications, engineering services, and edtech. Her leadership style has been recognized through the bronze Stevie Award for best omnichannel strategy, which also we would love to talk more about. So really excited about the conversation, Karen. Let's get into it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Niraj, for the invite, and very excited to talk about all the experience today.
Excellent. So a great starting point, Karen, would be to talk about what you do at Top Hat. Uh, you know, uh, Maybe a quick introduction to your role and how has your company been contributing to the customer success. And maybe to start with, right? Maybe it would also be very interesting to understand how you got into customer service and customer support.
Yeah, for sure. So many questions. So definitely at Top Hat, being a director of customer support, a lot of it is overseeing, of course, customer operations. Fairly straightforward there. But definitely being a large part of the support operations means that I'm very much focused on not only our professors, but we also work with students as well. So when it comes to making those meaningful experiences and making sure that we're really sparking better education, better learning experiences across the board, it's both for professors and for students. In terms of how I got into customer support, what that means for my experiences within Top Hat, it all started very, very early on. My first job happened to be at the grocery store. I think a lot of us, a lot of individuals who really focus on customer experience, have a first experience doing something that is very much in the customer service realm. So worked at the grocery store for a little bit, worked behind the counter, doing a lot of refunds and really listening to customers overall. I think if anything, that's really what gives me very much a reason to be a context driven leader, simply due to the fact that I really love giving people, what's the meaning behind this? How can we make this more meaningful and become more empathetic to the customer? Those are things that are really, really super interesting to me. That's how customer service for me sort of first started. I moved into, different different industries, different roles. A lot of it still required skills within customer service. And definitely here at Top Hat, what really drives the difference between, having just a regular team and a really amazing team has been really focusing on being empathetic towards the customer, really driving that empathy.
Lots there to unpack, Karen. I'll start with you mentioning being a context-driven leader, right?
Mhm.
Let's just talk about that. Can you tell the audience more about what you mean by that and how does one get there?
For sure, for sure. Being a context driven leader really means that you're doing a lot of storytelling. You're really giving not only members of your team, but anyone that you interact with across the organization the meaning behind what you're doing. I often find that if you give people that context, give them the reason of why they need to do what they do or why we will be better if we go, route A versus route B, then you do end up getting much better results. And the reason for that is people can begin to see your side of the conversation. They can begin to essentially empathize with what you're working towards and really go towards, align on the same goals, go and move in the same direction. One of the things that does come up in conversation is I happen to be an introvert. That for a very long time, I have found it being really challenging to really tell people that, even though I think it was very obvious when people were interacting with me, where, I wasn't really the loudest person in the room. But what made the difference and where I began to really you make peace with that and really become a much better leader is one, acknowledging that I am not an extroverted individual, and definitely different personality types work very well together. But also what's been really encouraging and what has really helped the context driven part is that because I'm also able to really take the time to really listen to feedback, again, building on that empathy, providing the context, because sometimes even as a context driven leader, if you want to go one way and everyone else is telling you the other way is the better way, you still have to listen. And sometimes there could be situations where you're not really able to shift gears for whatever those reasons are. As long as you take the opportunity to sit back and listen, digest, and make sure that individuals feel heard, that's where you're going to see like the big difference there.
Makes sense. So there are two parts to it, from what I understood, right? I mean, one is, making sure they see the forest and don't get lost in the woods, right? I think that's very
Mm-hmm.
important, right? And to some extent, probably as you touched upon, uh, you know, you probably being an introvert had a great fit with that because you could just shut out a lot of the noise
Mm-hmm.
and see the larger picture, right? And the second part was, of course, as you mentioned, right, being really open and receptive to what things outside you are telling you, right? Keeping your biases, etc., out, right? Very, very important insights there. We'll get back into it, but would love to dig a bit deeper into your role at Top Hat, right? You have been there for some time, and just talking about how what you started doing when you joined and how it evolved over a period of time, and how your understanding of the importance of being a context-aware leader or a
Mm-hmm.
context-driven leader evolved, through your experience at Top Hat, right? That will be very
Oh,
useful to get.
Niraj, that's a very interesting question. So I love unpacking that. So when I first joined Top Hat, the structure within the support team was fairly flat. So what I mean by that was it was essentially you were either a technical support representative or technical support specialist, or then you were a senior leader. When I say senior leader, I mean like a senior member of the team. There was really only those two. What that also meant that people tend to cap out. That has really led to different levels of turnover, less interest, and really getting everyone engaged was, I'd say, very problematic, very challenging. So moving into the role at Top Hat within customer support and thinking about and listening as well, because I would have one-on-ones with individuals on the team. What I was hearing was, we want to know our career path. We want to have a direction to move towards. So that got me thinking. Again, hinting on, taking that time to really think, digest, and strategize. What that meant was essentially restructuring the team. But it became a very, very positive exercise. Everyone on the team was involved. They were asked, like, this is the direction that I'm planning on. What do you think? What's your feedback? It was an iterative process. What I've always done with my team has been any sort of improvement, any single item, it doesn't matter what it is. If you have an idea, bring it up. We also, what's been really great about remote work is the use of Slack channels. We have one that's dedicated specifically to like any idea that you have about either the product, our process, anything at all, put in this channel. And the reason we do this is because we find that when individuals get busy, you might have that idea, but then you lose it, right? If you wait for the next meeting or you wait for the next retrospective that we're going to have, it's going to get lost in the ether. So what we ended up doing was creating this channel. Anybody can data dump in it, anybody, including like leaders such as myself, but anyone on the team. And then at the end of our, busy period, what we do is we have a whole team retrospective. We go through every single comment. And if we need more than the 2 hours that we've allocated, we'll make the time for it. The important part is going through every single piece of feedback, discussing it, figuring out where we want to go from there. And sometimes we find, individual trends because, if everyone's thinking quickly and putting those in, we know it's important. If we're seeing it more than once, we know it's something important and something we need to pay attention to. So I know I sort of went through into a different direction, but ultimately it's really about listening, gathering the details, and making sure everyone's voice is amplified and heard.
Makes sense. So one question there, Karen, is of course I understand that you could get your entire customer facing team to rally behind it and align towards it, right? But I'm sure you would have needed a lot of alignment from the rest of the company too, right? Because if you have the Slack channel where everyone from your team is posting questions, you
Hmm.
need product to come in and answer a question, you need tech to come in and answer a question, right? And this is a reflection on how we run as a company too. How did you get that alignment, and how could you tell everyone that it was worth their time to come in and spend time with everyone in support?
No, that's a great question. And definitely when it comes to cross departmental alignment, that one can be a bit challenging. But one of the things I found, especially as a leader within customer support, I manage our Voice of the Customer program. And that, in essence, has been the best way to get alignment across every single department in the company. So, what that entails and what's different about the Voice of the Customer program that we manage here at Top Hat is specifically we provide the context, the story behind everything. So when we think about the customer holistically, it's not only the external customer that we service. So in this case, it's not only the professor or maybe the school administrator or maybe even the student, it's also our internal customer as well. And when I say internal customer, it could be the support team. It could be another, like the customer success team, anybody that interacts or has any sort of interaction essentially with our product. So, in these voice of the customer sessions, essentially what we do is we get spotlight periods. So we meet roughly about every 2 weeks. Different departments might get a week to do an overview on one key area that has been really impacting the customer experience. And again, that customer could be internal, it could be external. And what has been super, super helpful there is it gives everyone the same context and the same language to work with. So we all start to empathize and understand each other's pain. We still, of course, do sessions and focus on our external customer. Um, but definitely the internal conversations has been incredibly impactful.
Can you tell us a bit more about the Voice of the Customer program, right? I mean, did you start it or did you inherit it and then improve it? And then, uh, lastly, right, how do you get everyone to come and contribute to it, right? I mean, I'm sure that your team, being the primary customer facing team, would be a primary contributor to it, but you would have the sales team too. You would probably have an account management team and probably engineering also, right? How do you run this? How do you break this down into themes? How do you share time between everyone? Just
Mhm.
the logistics and mechanics of running this program.
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely a program that I did end up inheriting. So initially, when the program first started, it was very much we were primarily focused on net promoter score. So every week we would meet, we would look at the net promoter score, we would discuss, we would review comments, we would look at different ways to slice the data. So it was very much a data focused, which I'm not saying we don't do the data focus now, but it was a very data driven, data focused conversation that was very similar to a readout. So when I took over the program, what I wanted to do was to make sure that the information we were sharing was being actioned on, was valuable, and made sense to the person on the other side that was digesting that information. So in doing so, what we needed to do to really make it more impactful was to put the storytelling behind the data. In order to get more cross departmental involvement, more individuals really looking at voice of the customer, not only do we have a Slack channel, it is also a very public and open channel, but I also individually reach out to leaders to ask if they have topics that they would like to
Mm,
share. Over the last year, there were some groups. So we have a learning solutions group, for example. That particular group helps us with some of the authors that work at Top Hat. And historically, that group isn't necessarily a focus when it comes to some of the product development work that has come through, or some of the information that the project managers are working on isn't necessarily disseminated entirely to the rest of the organization. So I saw this as an opportunity to reach out to some of the leaders, tell them about the program, give them an example of a really great program that was run by a different leader, and to see if there was something that they would like to share. And ultimately, with that one reach out, I've already had the Learning Solutions team actually request for more sessions to share more of their pain points and some of their learnings as well. So it's not always about pain when it comes to voice of the customer. It's also about positive learnings that we are seeing when working with our customers as well. The primary audience, very transparently, is primarily customer success, like individuals within our customer success org, and also some primarily are product managers. There are some engineers who would like to learn more about what the customers are seeing, and there are other exercises that are sort of or initiatives rather that are offshoots of voice of the customer that have just pretty much springboarded from the program itself.
So from what I understand, it essentially involves the entire company right now, right? I mean, you have
Mm-hmm.
pretty much everyone. Um, and do you run teams of this? Do you run like, different teams focusing on different teams, or do you have a single team where everyone comes and participates?
Yeah, so it's a single meeting twice a week that we all come together and meet on, but different teams are invited to, have a spotlight for their session. What we also do as well for some of the non-customer facing teams, we also have what it's newly implemented. We've done 2 issues so far, but essentially a very short 1 to 2 page newsletter for individuals, primarily finance focused, looking at like, again, NPS, some of the comments, using a little bit of AI to do some analysis of where we are in the business. What are customers saying about us? What are we hearing? Where can we possibly look at next because of, certain pain points that we are seeing in the marketplace?
Hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. The one thing that I found interesting in these exercises is that while it's important to look at a lot of data, a lot of graphs, and a lot of plots, anecdotes are super powerful, right? I mean, a lot
Yes.
of times, 3 pages of graphs is less powerful than one customer story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Correct.
focus on customer stories? Do you have a time reserved for that?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely in the Voice of the Customer program, we definitely invite. Usually, it's our customer success managers who have the best stories when it comes to interacting with our customers, and we invite them to talk about, what they're seeing and what they're hearing. We also, as part of not necessarily Voice of the Customer, but in general as a company, we like to hear stories about, turning zeros to heroes. So any customer that wasn't necessarily an advocate at the time, what all the work that we did, and usually this involves several teams across the organization, what we've done to turn that situation around and make them essentially an advocate for our product. And I think, if anything, you really hit the nail on the head there, Niraj. It's all about the story. It's what are we seeing, but really putting some words behind it to give it context.
Makes sense. Great. Good to learn all that. One thing that was intriguing to me was that you worked across sectors, right? You worked in telecom, engineering, ed tech, and one thing which would be interesting to hear from you is what running themes you have seen between these sectors, right? Do you have themes that you see as parallel threads which run across these sectors, and any differences that you might have seen, working in these sectors in how customers behave and how employees, handle those customers?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think if anything, there's a lot of similarities between each one. The most successful teams are the ones that think about and empathize with the customer. Teaching empathy is not really something you can teach. It's something you feel that's innate in you, but you can certainly be more understanding to somebody's situation. Again, if you have that context. But what I can say is, from an engineering perspective, at my previous company, I was working with a lot of essentially junior developers. The subset of individuals there very similar, but I will also say that it's very difficult to find somebody who is both technical and also empathetic. The two, it makes a magical unicorn. So what that also means is, when it comes to team structure, it becomes a little bit different. Those who are much more technical but not as strong with customers might get a slightly different role than somebody who is much more attuned to a customer. But I will say, here at Top Hat, when it comes to EdTech, our product, while it's very complex and technical, it doesn't require anyone on the support team to write any code. So what that means is we're able to find individuals who are technical in the sense that they understand or can digest technical documentation, but also that they have that level of empathy as well. And there's a lot more career growth and opportunities that we can make in a much more strategic way, that are palatable to individuals there, that sort of growth path, because they have that good mix of being able to ingest technical documentation along with being empathetic towards the customer.
Makes sense. No, I can understand that you have a long history of hiring for these roles, right? I mean, going through
Mhm.
organizations, different roles, right? Anything that you've learned, right? How do you check for something as abstract but important as empathy, for example, right?
Ooh.
And how have you done that over the years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say very early on, it wasn't really, not that there's ever really a science, but it wasn't as clear, or the results were not as obvious. What we've done is, over the years, I've started to refine a list of questions where I find that are very useful at determining different types of skill sets. Now, it's not perfect by any means, but you get a much better gauge not only on the personality, but the individual at the end of it. So, usually, what becomes really helpful, not so much from an empathy standpoint, but I do find individuals who are able to essentially answer the question around, um, pretend I know nothing about what you're talking about, pick a hobby or something you're truly, truly interested in, and explain it to me as if I know nothing. I find that with that question alone, you find so much about the individual. One, if they're able to, break a task down into simple steps, which then involves being empathetic towards the customer, because you have the sense that, okay, this person might not know everything, all the technical jargon. I need to strip it down. You get to know a little bit about their interests and their hobbies, which is great because, everyone needs to interact across the team, but also their ability to distill complex information into something much easier to digest. The other area that I tend to focus on as well when it comes to hiring is that level of curiosity. Because that really makes the difference between a good agent and a great agent. Somebody who is willing to ask a few more questions to figure out what the root of the customer's problem is going to be far more successful than somebody who just takes the customer's question or whatever they had presented to us at face value, in order to ask or to figure out if that candidate is the right fit. Another question that's really, really powerful in terms of figuring out the level of curiosity an individual has is to ultimately ask them, um, like, is there anything that I haven't, like, a very straightforward, very basic question. Is there anything in this interview process that you would like me to know? Or is there anything that I haven't asked that you would have liked me to ask? It sounds very straightforward, and it's often a simple question that does come up in other recommendations. But I also find it's incredibly useful at figuring out if somebody has that level of curiosity, because there's always at least one individual item that you as an individual would want your interviewer to know, or something that you're curious about that you haven't actually asked.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting, Karen. Great. So from here, I'd love to get into, this TV award for omnichannel support, right? How did you build towards it? And exactly what was it that, got them interested, right? So that'd be great for us to know.
Yeah. So the Stevie Award, very, very proud of my team, very much a wonderful effort. And I know, um, one thing, as a woman in tech, I should also take my accolades as well. So I'm not saying I wasn't part of the process, but I do also want to make sure that, because the support team, usually a support team by nature is a team that works behind the scenes. I do want to make sure that, my team itself, like, they also deserve the accolades as well. So essentially, we won the Bronze Stevie Award for Omnichannel Strategy. It's something that my team and I have been working on for the last 3 to 4 years. But really, like, the essence of omnichannel really means, having the customer feel like it's only one communication experience instead of multiple. I think when we think about some support experiences, perhaps at other companies, like, when we think about those interactions, they can be very frustrating. And for me, as a support leader, I often think about those interactions and want to make sure that the interactions that professors and students have with Top Hat are not within that realm. So what we normally do, as I mentioned earlier about collecting feedback and making sure that we have that Slack channel to gather the details, we certainly do that. But a big part of what we do is during our off peak, so outside of our campaign periods, we spend a lot of time thinking and iterating on our processes. I'm a big believer in the power of Kaizen. I think, if anything, that's really how you make big strategic changes. They're not one big, restructure. They're not one big full swoop of items. It's all about small incremental changes. And definitely when you have to start slimming things down or looking at what you have, that's when you start getting creative. And that's when the magic really starts to happen. So it's been a multi-year process for my team. What we've really done is taken all our processes, and I've been very much a stickler about, like, we need to break everything down. Let's look at it, at face value, but let's break everything down. And then once we have it all broken down, it's going to be a whole lot easier for us to go back and iterate and make it better. A lot of that also has to do with looking at our data, taking our support knowledge base. We have customer facing support articles, doing a whole revamp. It was also a cross departmental, cross company endeavor where we just brought everyone together. It's like we have over 500 support articles. No customer is going to be able to read all 500. We need to get it down to 100 articles or less and make sure it's answering all the questions. No duplicates, no nothing. And so what that really meant was getting buy-in, getting everyone to really, really believe in what we were doing. It was making the data clean, making it usable, making our customers see the value behind being able to self-serve, right? So that's part of it too. So the omni-channel experience is really just this labor of love that we've really worked towards over the last few years. It also involved a lot of different people to really get us to where we are today.
Hmm. Makes sense. One thing that might be interesting to the audience would be, your toolkit for doing this, right? I mean, what any interesting tools, or what did you run your customer support on? Anything new that you found while you're running this process?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a good question. I mean, we primarily use Salesforce as
Hmm.
our main CRM. Really any customer help center or any CRM that you're using, it's not really a matter of that tool, but it's all a matter of how are you intaking your requests today and how do you want to make it better. Some of it could be made easier through tools, and one of the nice things about Salesforce is there's some customization that you can build if you have Salesforce developers that are working with you on that, but there's also new features and everything that comes through. But ultimately, you need to take a look at what your customers appreciate, what they want, and then iterate on that. Because what will work for me and my team might not work very well for you and what you have up and running, because sometimes entirely different products or different ways that customers want to be serviced are not exactly the same.
Makes sense. That brings me to the last but extremely unavoidable question, Karen,
Mm-hmm.
around AI, right?
Yeah.
And
AI.
and your general thoughts, right? I would not structure this question a lot, but your general thoughts on what you are seeing on AI, how it has seen you impacting your work and your processes over the last couple of years, and what do you see as a way forward in terms of how it will impact how we all do our work?
Yeah, so AI has been interesting, right? So AI has existed for an extremely, extremely long time, but it's funny. It's really only been the past few years where everyone's just been talking about AI. And if you are not doing anything with AI, you're running behind. You're behind the scenes. But what I have found really interesting overall is the the speed that it is moving at, the speed that the technology, the individual products that have been pushed out there, the focus. I mean, even on the top hat side of things, like our development team looking at different ways to integrate AI into our product to make things easier. For the support team or just support in general, one of the very common things that individuals are looking at is sort of like a co-pilot functionality. AI is wonderful at summarizing. AI is wonderful at improving, the way you write, the way you use language, but that's because that's the nature of what it does. And my team, like we've definitely gone through some of the templates that we use and see if there's anything we can smooth out or make better. So, small things, small sort of things that AI can do for us. But what we're also looking at is ways we can make sure that we're categorizing information appropriately. Now, of course, those are very basic use cases of AI. In terms of taking it to the next level, I actually find listening to marketing forums um, is a really good way in to get more information. Because with marketing specifically, I find that marketing community actually has a lot more innovative work that they're doing with AI. So it's not just about content creation or image generation or any of that nature. There's some fun things that are happening in that space. And I also find that learning a bit more about how other departments might be using AI or other individual companies are using AI is a great way to then start again speaking the same language, making sure that you all are having that same level of perhaps empathy when working with the customer. But yeah, predictive, proactive type of support is really, in my opinion, the next level of where we can use AI. Sentiment analysis, fairly straightforward, and something again, because with a large language model, it's what it's built to do. It understands language. So being able to take your data and having some way to process it, whether it's through a tool or whether it's something you've built, wonderful to do. My team uses a lot of full story to get an understanding of our customers, and there's some fun features in there as well. We're looking at ways to um, like create notifications and triggers to figure out where customers are getting frustrators within the product. So when I say the product, I mean like within our top hat product, but using another product to trigger that. So yeah, I mean, it's not a full answer on AI itself, but I think in general, the support team has had as a industry, as a department specifically, and this is not a top hat specifically, but just across the board, a lot of the focus on AI has been on trying to replace
Mm.
roles and trying to automate. And while some of that will continue to happen, and I believe that makes a lot of sense because if we can do something faster, why not have a tool do it? But there's still that element of human effort that's still required in quite a few of those conversations. And that's where, if we look at other ways to look at the language that's being spoken, do some more higher level analysis, that's where we can bring, support agents and the support department to the next level.
That's very useful, Karen, and I totally, totally understand and subscribe to that, right? I think the objective, initially was portrayed as being able to somehow use AI to do AI the talking with the customers, right, and replace agents to the largest extent possible. But the objective really needs to be able to help customers better, right, and do things towards that end. And then towards that end, what you just listed out is a great direction to take, and I'm happy to see that you and your team are taking that direction.
Perfect. Amazing.
Great, Karen. Thank you for the conversation, right? I think we went over a large range of subjects, and I'm sure everyone who goes through this will find this really useful.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
glad. Thank you.